In this video, I will reveal the main secret of ancient Egypt. We see the gold of the pharaohs, the giant pyramids, and temples that have stood for millennia. We remember the names of Ramesses, Hatshepsut, and Tutankhamun. But we almost never talk about those on whose shoulders this civilization was built, stone by stone. Their names have been erased from history, but their labor is Egypt. This is the story of the common warriors, the forgotten soldiers, who were not so much an army of conquest. Watch this video to the end, and you will learn how an ordinary peasant was transformed into a pillar of the throne, and why, without him, not a single great monument would exist.
Steady, men. Lower it gently.
What if I told you that everything you believed about the builders of Egypt isn't quite true? Popular culture has created an image of vast crowds of exhausted slaves.
Here, take this piece.
Thank you. We will need the strength for the afternoon.
However, modern research paints a completely different picture, one that is far more complex and organized. The great construction projects were state endeavors, requiring not just brute force, but discipline, organization, and professional skills. And the main organized force for this was the Egyptian army.
Move the next block to the third level. And keep the pace steady. We must finish before the inundation.
These soldiers, called Nefer, recruits, were not just conscripts. They were often career specialists. In times of peace, the army did not sit idly in barracks. It transformed into a gigantic construction corporation. It was the soldiers who formed the backbone of expeditions to the quarries, provided the logistics, and performed the most complex engineering tasks. They were the state's all-purpose workers, capable of both standing guard and hewing granite blocks. The idea that an army only fights does not fit the realities of the ancient world. For the pharaoh, the army was, above all, an instrument of state will. Sending the army to mine turquoise in the Sinai or to build a temple at Karnak was a routine matter. It was this dual function.
Pharaoh requires one man from every 10 households. Your names will be recorded now. Write down, Ahmos, son of the weaver.
Are you ready to learn the truth about how this unique army was created? The system of recruitment for the Egyptian army was based on two principles: conscription and voluntary enlistment. The main method was a regional levy, or census, where the pharaoh's scribes would go through the nomes, provinces, and enlist a certain number of young, physically fit men. For many peasant families, this was a heavy burden as they lost a pair of working hands.
A better life awaits you. Join the ranks, find honor, and leave the dust behind.
However, there was another, equally important category: volunteers. For a poor young man from a village, the army was one of the few real paths to social mobility. Military service guaranteed stable rations, consisting of bread, beer, vegetables, and fish, which was already a huge advantage compared to the unpredictable life of a farmer. Furthermore, upon completion of service, a veteran could count on a reward from the pharaoh.
Steady that spear, recruit. Precision in your grip, discipline in your stance.
After recruitment, the new soldiers entered training camps, where the process of turning them into soldiers began. The main emphasis was not so much on combat skills as on absolute discipline and the ability to work as a team. They were taught to obey officers' commands without question, to march in formation, and to perform collective actions. This drill was vital for both construction work and maintaining order. Recruits were also trained to handle the basic equipment necessary for service. This wasn't just simple weapons like spears or clubs, which were used on guard duty. They were taught to use the tools needed for everyday work: levers, ropes, and simple construction devices. Physical training was grueling and constant, but it was not an end in itself. Its purpose was to develop the endurance necessary for long marches through the desert. Soldiers had to be able to carry heavy loads, work under the scorching sun, and act in unison. This endurance was equally important for pursuing border violators and for moving a stone block.
Ensure your men understand the terrain.
The officer corps, or Jayu, was often formed from the most capable and literate soldiers. Those who showed diligence and intelligence could advance through the ranks. Literacy was highly valued, as the army needed a large number of scribes and administrators to keep records. Thus, even a common soldier who learned to read and write could have an impressive career.
Literacy is the true path to command.
Ready your spears. Hold the
Therefore,
line.
the Egyptian army was less a machine of war and more a school of discipline and organization. It took raw material, peasant youths, and turned them into universal operatives.
They are coming. The defense of this position rests with you. Hold the line!
In the next chapter, we'll reveal what secret economic tool the pharaohs held and how it was connected to the army.
Pay close attention. The Pharaoh's economic reforms mean we must secure the spice routes by the next moon. Your service is critical to this new strategy.
I'm about to reveal the most protected secret of the pharaoh's state machine. We are used to thinking of economics in terms of trade and agriculture, but in ancient Egypt, one of the main economic instruments was the army. It was the army that secured the extraction of all the valuable resources upon which the state's wealth was built. Egypt's wealth lay not only in grain. The great quarries such as Gebel el-Silsila, where sandstone was extracted, or Aswan, the source of the famous pink granite, were essentially giant military installations. These sites were managed by army officials. Soldiers not only guarded the perimeter from outsiders, but also constituted the main body of skilled laborers and engineers. Expeditions for resources into remote and inhospitable lands were exclusively military operations. For example, the expeditions to the Eastern Desert, to Wadi Hammamat for beck and stone, or to the Sinai Peninsula for turquoise and copper. These enterprises required strict organization, protection from nomadic tribes, and the ability to survive in the desert. Thousands of soldiers were sent on these expeditions for many months. They built roads, constructed temporary settlements, dug wells, and carried out the mining. All logistics, the delivery of food, water, and tools, also fell on the shoulders of the military administration. Army scribes kept strict accounts of every ingot of copper or block of stone extracted. It was the soldiers who were the force that built not only the temples, but all the infrastructure. They erected dams and dug canals for the irrigation system, which was the basis of agriculture. They built fortresses on the borders, which served not only for defense, but also as trading outposts and custom stations. This system was incredibly effective, as it allowed the pharaoh to control all key resources directly. Gold from Nubia, copper from Sinai, granite from Aswan, all of it flowed into the treasury, bypassing middlemen. The army was the guarantor of this state monopoly on natural wealth. Thus, the might of Egypt was built not only on the fertile silt of the Nile, but also on the disciplined battalions that extracted resources from the lifeless deserts. If you enjoyed this unique perspective on the role of the Egyptian army, please like this video. It helps us do more research like this. Guess what was on the daily menu of the man on whom the empire's economy depended? The daily life of an Egyptian soldier was far from luxurious, but it provided a stability unavailable to many of his contemporaries. The staple of his diet, like that of most Egyptians, was bread and beer. These were not just food products, but standard units of payment for labor. The beer, or henket, was thick and nutritious, more like a liquid porridge, and was an important source of calories and vitamins. Bread was baked in various forms and was also the foundation of the diet. In addition to this, the ration always included vegetables, primarily lots of onions and garlic, which were valued for their nutritional and antiseptic properties. Meat was a rarity and was issued only on special occasions or after the successful completion of a major project. More often, the diet included dried or salted fish, which the Nile provided in abundance. This diet was simple but balanced and provided enough energy for heavy physical labor. Soldiers lived in barracks, which could be part of a fortress, a temporary camp near a quarry, or a permanent quarter in the capital. These were simple mud brick structures designed to house dozens of men. There was little personal space, and life was lived in full view of everyone. The day was strictly regulated. Reveille at dawn, a morning roll call, distribution of rations and tools, and then long hours of work. Whether it was patrolling the desert, working in the quarry, or construction work at a temple site, the labor was monotonous and exhausting. Evenings were devoted to cleaning tools, mending clothes, and rest. A soldier's clothing was extremely functional. It consisted of a simple linen kilt, which did not restrict movement. In cooler weather or in the desert at night, heavier cloaks might be used. Officers wore better quality clothing and insignia that emphasized their status. It was this routine daily service of thousands of nameless Nefer that was the foundation upon which the Pharaoh's power rested. How different do you think this stable, yet harsh life was from that of a simple farmer? Let's take a closer look at what these universal soldiers were armed with. Their arsenal was divided into two clear categories: equipment for maintaining order and tools for creation. The first was necessary for their police and guard functions. This included simple but effective weapons. However, most of the time, a soldier's hands were occupied with completely different items: work tools. On construction sites and in quarries, their main weapons were copper or bronze chisels. These tools were relatively soft and quickly dulled against granite, so they required constant sharpening, which was done by special army craftsmen. Moving giant blocks and statues required the efforts of thousands of men in special equipment. Durable ropes, woven from palm fiber or papyrus, played a key role. Soldiers, organized into teams, would pull these ropes in unison, moving multi-ton loads on wooden sledges. To reduce friction, the path in front of the sledges was often slicked with water or wet clay. What if I showed you how an ancient border patrol worked, one that was more effective than many modern ones? One of the most important and least visible functions of the Egyptian army was guarding the borders. Egypt was the gift of the Nile, surrounded by inhospitable deserts. These deserts were not only a defense, but also a source of threats in the form of nomadic tribes and smugglers. To control these territories, a whole network of fortresses and observation posts was created. A particularly strong line of fortifications was built in Nubia, south of Egypt, to control the trade routes and the rich gold mines. Fortresses like the mighty Buin were masterpieces of military engineering. Thousands of soldiers served in these fortresses. Their task was not to wage war, but to patrol and observe. They monitored traffic on the Nile, collected taxes from trade boats coming from Nubia, and suppressed any attempts at unauthorized entry into Egyptian territory. Another important front was the protection of caravan routes running through the desert. Trade with Sinai, Punt, or the oases was vital to the economy. Armed units of soldiers escorted caravans laden with valuable goods, protecting them from attacks by robbers. Soldiers serving on the border had to be experts in desert survival. They knew how to find water, how to navigate by the stars, and how to move without attracting attention. They were the eyes and ears of the Pharaoh in the endless sands. Their reports were critically important for maintaining stability in the state. It was this inconspicuous daily work of the border guards that provided Egypt with millennia of stability. They were the invisible shield that allowed farmers to peacefully cultivate their fields and builders to erect temples. How different do you think this service was from service in the construction battalions? In the next chapter, we'll talk about what life was like in these remote fortresses. The life of a soldier in a border garrison, for example, in one of the Nubian fortresses, was a world of strict routine. These fortresses were, in essence, self-sufficient towns, cut off from the rest of Egypt by hundreds of kilometers of desert or the Nile cataracts. The day began and ended with a signal, and all of life was subordinated to a military schedule. The main duty of the garrison was guard service. Soldiers took turns on duty on the walls and towers, observing the surrounding terrain. They had to record any movement, the approach of a trade caravan, the appearance of Nubian scouts, or just a dust cloud on the horizon. Besides observation, an important task was patrolling the surrounding area. Small squads would leave the fortress to check the roads, water sources, and to ensure there were no threats. These patrols were the only way to maintain control over the vast and sparsely populated region. Inside the fortress, its own life bustled. In addition to barracks, there were granaries, workshops, and administrative buildings. Soldiers free from guard duty were busy repairing equipment, cleaning weapons, training, or performing maintenance tasks. Everyone was kept busy. The fortress was home not only to soldiers, but also to their families, as well as to craftsmen, scribes, and priests. Within the walls, there was a small temple where daily rituals were performed, maintaining the garrison's connection to the gods of Egypt. Behind every squad of soldiers pulling a stone block, and behind every garrison in the desert, stood an invisible but all-powerful force, the army scribes. If the soldiers were the pharaoh's muscles, the scribes were his nervous system and brain. Without them, no large-scale operation, whether construction or a military campaign, would have been possible. Scribes in the army were the elite. They were educated in special schools where they were taught not only hieroglyphs and hieratic script, but also mathematics, geometry, and administration. Gaining a position as a scribe in the army was prestigious, as it opened the path to high administrative posts. Their main task was accounting. They kept detailed personnel rosters, noting who was present, absent, or on sick leave. They were responsible for distributing rations, ensuring that every soldier received his quota of bread, beer, and vegetables on time. On construction sites and in quarries, scribes functioned as foremen and logisticians. They calculated the necessary quantities of materials, tools, and manpower. They recorded the daily work output, monitoring the project's progress. On expeditions into the desert, the scribe's role was even more critical. He was responsible for managing limited resources, primarily water and food. The lives of the entire detachment depended on his precise calculations. He kept the expedition's log. Scribes were also responsible for the armories and warehouses. They monitored the condition of tools, weapons, and equipment. They registered the issue and return of every chisel, every rope, every pair of sandals. This total bureaucracy was the foundation of Egyptian efficiency. Nevertheless, this system worked. The smooth interaction between the scribe administrators and the soldier laborers allowed Egypt to realize projects that stagger the imagination even today.
Push it now.
Why would a simple peasant voluntarily commit to decades of hard service in the army? The answer lies not only in the stable rations, but also in the unique career opportunities. The army was one of the few but most reliable social elevators in ancient Egypt. It gave a man of low birth the chance to completely change his destiny. A common Nefer who began his service carrying heavy loads could prove himself. Diligence, discipline, and natural intelligence were noticed by officers. Such a soldier could be appointed as a leader of a work gang, entrusted with managing 10 other men. This was the first step in the hierarchy.
Literacy is the foundation of command. You are ready for the next step.
The next step was literacy. A soldier who found the time and opportunity to learn to write opened the door to the officer corps. He could become a Jayu officer or even join the caste of scribes. This immediately changed his status. He received better rations, higher quality clothing, and most importantly, respect.
Must reach the copper mines in the Wadi Araba by the next
The highest army ranks gave access to enormous power and wealth. Fortress commanders, expedition leaders, or generals, Imai Ra Mesha, were among the most influential people in the state. They answered directly to the vizier and the pharaoh, but even for those who didn't have a meteoric career, service was profitable. After many years of faithful service, a soldier could retire with honor. The pharaoh often rewarded veterans for their labor. The most desired reward was a plot of land. By receiving his own plot of fertile land, the veteran became a prosperous landowner. He could build a house, raise a family, and provide his children with a future he himself could never have dreamed of as a youth. He moved into a different social class, becoming part of the local elite. Land was often allocated near military settlements or in newly developed areas. In this way, the pharaoh not only rewarded veterans, but also created pockets of a loyal population throughout the country. These former soldiers were devoted to the throne and served as a pillar of local authority. Therefore, when a soldier pulled a rope or stood on a fortress wall, he wasn't just working for the pharaoh, he was working for his own future, for his plot of land, and for a status he could pass on to his children. This was the powerful motivation that moved the empire.
It is why we serve.
When speaking of the Pharaoh's soldiers, one cannot fail to mention one of the most famous and unique groups, the Medjay. Their story shows how the Egyptian state skillfully integrated foreigners, turning them into its most reliable support. Originally, Medjay was the name of a nomadic Nubian tribe living in the deserts east of the Nile. These people were known as skilled warriors, archers, and unsurpassed trackers, perfectly adapted to life in the desert. The Egyptians initially saw them as a threat, but over time began to hire them for service. During the Middle Kingdom, the Medjay came to be used as mercenary scouts and border guards. Their reputation was so high that by the New Kingdom, the era of the great conquering pharaohs, the Medjay had transformed into an elite corps. They were no longer just mercenaries, they became an integral part of the Egyptian state machine. The term now signified a profession, not an ethnicity. The main function of the Medjay became internal security and the protection of high-priority sites. They were in essence an elite police force and personal guard. They were entrusted with the most sensitive tasks that could not be given to regular army units. The most famous duty of the Medjay was guarding the royal necropolises, primarily the Valley of the Kings and Thieves. This was a sacred and vulnerable place, holding the untold treasures and mummies of the pharaohs. The Medjay patrolled the cliffs around the valley, preventing any attempts by robbers to reach the tombs. The story of the Medjay is a striking example of how Egypt assimilated the strengths of neighboring peoples. It didn't just wall itself off from the desert, it took the best from it, putting them in service of the empire. These former nomads became a symbol of the pharaoh's unshakable power. We see that behind the majestic facade of ancient Egypt lay a titanic and multifaceted operation. The forgotten soldier, the Nefer, was not just a warrior. He was a builder, an engineer, a border guard, a policeman, and a logistician. It was his disciplined and organized labor that was the instrument the pharaohs used to carve their eternity in stone. The history of these nameless soldiers is not one of conquest, but of creation. They carried on their shoulders not only a shield, but also a mason's chisel and an engineer's measuring cord. Without their daily, monotonous, and heavy labor, there would be no pyramids, no temples, and no greatness of Egypt itself. What other forgotten professions or hidden mechanisms of ancient civilizations would you like us to break down in future videos? Suggest your topics in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel